Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Dose, and the aftermath for the Xbox Developer Direct has been overwhelmingly positive online. I think for such a long time, there's been that running joke that next year is going to be the year for Xbox, or, just kind of wait until next E3. But seemingly, the wait is officially over. We are starting to see the fruits of Xbox's labor. With all of their different studio acquisitions over the years, they are now an official behemoth in the game industry. I mean, if it's their goal to be the biggest gaming publisher in the world, yeah, I mean, it seems like they're certainly producing that way with not only the games that they revealed yesterday, but allegedly, they actually have more unconfirmed and unannounced 2025 games on the way. And we're going to talk about what those games could possibly be, or at least according to the latest information that popped up online today. Before we get started, though, I do want to go ahead and thank all of my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. Thank you all just so much for your support. I truly, truly do appreciate you all, and you will receive this video through early access. Let's just go and get right into things, though, starting off with Ninja Gaiden 2 Black. I mean, they just randomly dropped this game yesterday during the Xbox Direct, and I always love when companies do this because, we can just kind of play it right away. But at the same time, there is that downside to shadow launches as well. There is that challenge of just getting all of this information out to consumers. So that's where I come in. And let's just kind of go over all of the different information that we've gotten since it launched. One is that while they're referring to it as a remaster, the upgraded visual seems much more in line with a remake. It utilizes Unreal Engine 5, and I mean, it is a night and day difference in terms of graphical improvement. It looks absolutely incredible, and I'd say this is a good comparison to something like Metroid Prime Remastered as one such example. I mean, yes, technically it's the same game with some quality of life improvements, but the visual overhaul is drastic, to say the least. Now, for anybody who likes physical games, there is also a physical PlayStation 5 version that you can get on PlayAsia for $50. It is exclusive to that website, but you can actually pre-order it right now. It will release on March 27th, and it's a multi-regional release, meaning that it will have English language as well as others. Now, speaking of the PlayStation 5, Ninja Gaiden 2 Black 2 also has a PS5 Pro enhancement, which, I mean, that's nice to see for anybody who has that console. Then lastly, and this isn't really new details per se, but it is still good to hear because Ninja Gaiden 2 Black opened up as the 5th best-selling paid game on Steam's global charts. So, for a shadow launch, I'd say that's a pretty good sign for just its first 24 hours. I mean, I'm not necessarily expecting massive numbers per se, but, I mean, it's been far too long since we've gotten a new Ninja Gaiden game, and the fact that we have this remaster to tide us over until the eventual Ninja Gaiden 4 later this year is just incredible. Now, speaking of Steam charts and expectations, back when Dragon Age the Veilguard first launched last year, I warned people against jumping to conclusions based on its early results. It ended up reaching 70,000 players on Steam within its first 24 hours, and I never really looked at that as bad per se, but I also didn't exactly view it as overly impressive either. I mean, Dragon's Dogma 2, which you can actually argue that's a lesser-known franchise, it surpassed 200,000 earlier in the same year. Meanwhile, the Veilguard was actually tracking below Divinity Original Sin 2, which, yes, that's a great game, but obviously it also has a much smaller budget. Yet even still, despite all of that, a lot of people automatically just kind of assumed that 70,000 concurrent players on Steam was good for the Veilguard. But as I said back then, you kind of need to keep things into context. One, and this is probably the most important of things, is that EA probably has very, very high expectations for Dragon Age, considering the last game sold 10+ million copies. And then number two is that Veilguard was in development for a very, very long time. I believe it was like 8 years or something like that. So yeah, its budget was likely very high, and that also means that it probably needs to sell several million units just to break even. Well, we do have an official update now, and EA confirmed that the Veilguard, in fact, did not meet their revenue expectations. So, I mean, this is really unfortunate for a studio like BioWare. I mean, once upon a time, they were legitimately viewed as an industry-leading RPG studio, but this is now their third high-profile game in a row that has performed below expectations. To say that a lot is riding on Mass Effect 4 now is probably a bit of an understatement, because if they can't hit their target with that game, there will be a very real question about whether or not BioWare can continue on. Now, we also have some new, and I'd say very welcome, information for Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3. We're currently hearing two different things that leads me to believe that Part 3 could actually release a lot sooner than what some people might expect, and also on more platforms than what we've seen in the past. Now, I'll come back to that here in just a moment, but in an interview with Famitsu, the Final Fantasy VII director said this: "As the next part of its conclusion, I gave Nomura the homework that I want something that would respect the original, while also giving a sense of satisfaction beyond what could be experienced in the original, something that would conclude the remake project. That was finally handed in at the end of the year, and the scenario for the third installment was then completed. I am very satisfied with it, so I'm sure it will be a satisfying conclusion for fans as well." So I think that tells us that they're progressing incredibly fast with its story already being laid out. And I mean, I imagine they already have a lot of the assets in place with the release of Rebirth. So the only thing that could really slow down Part 3's release is if they, upgrade engines, which is actually still very possible. And in my opinion, I think that may actually be needed just because Rebirth didn't look all that great on the PlayStation 5. But other than that, Square Enix is seemingly on a mission to fast-track Part 3. I mean, that's also the reason that they decided against an expansion like they did for Part 1 and Yuffie's episode. Now, also, we are hearing that Part 3 will not be an exclusive for next-generation consoles. You can see this back and forth on 4Gamer, where it says, "For those who have played Final Fantasy VII Remake on PS4 and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth on PS5, I think there may be some concern that the third work will be for the next generation console," in which Square Enix's Katase responded, "No, you can rest assured about the next one." Then Hamaguchi said, "As I said earlier, we will release future titles on a wide range of platforms so that more people can play them. I can't promise anything at this point, but we want many people to play the games we create, so we will do our best." So they seemingly teased two different things here. One is that it will be available for this generation of consoles or this generation of platforms, and also it will not be an exclusive to PlayStation. They once again reiterated that they want to launch it on a wide range of platforms, which very well could mean they could launch it on the PlayStation 5, the Xbox Series, maybe the Nintendo Switch 2 if it can run on that console, and of course, on PC as well. Now, there is a chance that it could be a cross-generation game. They didn't exactly rule that out, but they did suggest last year that they are targeting a 2027 release. So, by all indication, or at least for right now, Part 3 could possibly be in our hands a lot sooner than what some people might expect for a modern AAA game. Okay, so let's go talk about Xbox and what's next for them. I mean, they just dropped their Xbox Direct, and in my opinion, they absolutely cooked. I thought it was a fantastic showcase, and that right now seems to be the overwhelming opinion online. So they did a good job, but one thing that you'll notice about that Direct is that other than Ninja Gaiden 4, they mainly focused on just the first 5 months of the year. I mean, if you look at their pipeline until June, they have at least one big game for Game Pass, I believe, pretty much every single month. There's Avowed, South of Midnight, Doom the Dark Ages, Expedition 33, and of course, they just launched Ninja Gaiden 2 Black. So, I mean, that is actually an incredible lineup on paper. I mean, we still need to see the execution, but here's the thing. June to December is still a mystery for Xbox, and that's by design. I mean, we know that they're going to have their yearly summer showcase, and those are typically even bigger than these Xbox Developer Directs, and that's where we're going to hear about their plans for the second half of 2025. Well, interestingly, Tom Warren from The Verge may have spilled the beans about some of the games that could release in 2025 if they meet their targets for all of these games. There is an if here, but let's just go and read what he said. He said, and I quote, "Microsoft's Xbox Summer Showcase will then set the stage for the rest of the year and beyond. Ninja Gaiden 4 is coming in the fall. but Microsoft announced that The Outer Worlds 2 and Fable are 2025 releases. It will also be interesting to see if Gears of War E-Day will make the 2025 release date I'd heard Microsoft was planning for last year. There could be some more surprises on the way too. In recent weeks, rumors have pointed towards a remaster of The Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion. I first heard about this remaster last year, and at the time, Microsoft was tentatively targeting a release in late spring or early summer 2025. I'm also hoping we hear more about Contraband or Clockwork Revolution at the Xbox Summer Showcase. So, first off, that doesn't mean that all of these games will release in 2025, but he did drop 6 more potential surprises for the latter half of 2025, including The Outer Worlds 2, Fable, the Oblivion remake, Contraband, which we have not heard about in a very long time, Clockwork Revolution, and the biggest surprise of the bunch being Gears of War E-Day. Now, personally, I thought Gears E-Day would be a 2026 game, but potentially for their next generation console, and it does kind of line up with its 20th anniversary, but it seems like they might be targeting this generation of consoles and possibly in 2025, or at least according to Tom Warren. I mean, this would be a massive game if they can actually get it out this year. Now, we also heard just a few weeks back that a Gears collection could be in the pipeline as well, and I mean, if they can actually pull all this off, I mean, we are legitimately talking about one of the best lineups ever for Xbox. And let's not forget about the yearly Call of Duty release. I mean, all of these games will launch into Game Pass day one, including Call of Duty. And I mean, when you think about that, we could be talking about a major game on a monthly basis throughout 2025. That is unheard of in today's industry. I mean, in the back of my head, I do have to kind of wonder about what could have been if they would have, been more adamant about console exclusivity. I feel like they do finally have the ammunition to truly compete now. And, and as I've constantly promoted on this channel, I do preach competition. I think competition breeds excellence. But, they are taking a different direction here. And what I'll kind of say is that it'll be interesting to see how all this plays out for them. Obviously, there's a lot of money in the direction that they're going in. And I mean, if anything else, if the rumors are true that they have a PCS console in development that can also play Steam games, of course they have that handheld as well, then I think those could actually be enticing options to keep people invested into their ecosystem next generation, all while executing this multi-platform, but not completely multi-platform approach. Because the combination of Game Pass with, pipelines like this for 2025 is mighty impressive, to say the least. For the time being, though, it is important to keep in mind that all of this is just a rumor for the time being. But one thing is for certain. Absolutely expect some surprises for their summer showcase. Let's go take a look at the poll of the day, though, where I asked you all, which Xbox Direct game are you most looking forward to in 2025? And as you can see here, Doom: The Dark Ages took the #1 spot with Expedition 33 at #2. I was a little surprised by that, but that once again showcases just how much Expedition 33 speaks to the JRPG community. Then at #3, just ever so slightly, is Ninja Gaiden 4. Now, that's actually my #1. That's the one I'm most excited for. But I think out of all of the games on this list, the one that I'm the most sure about in just terms of sheer quality is Doom: The Dark Ages. Just knowing id Software, I'd be shocked if this was anything less than stellar. And it does look pretty incredible so far. So, yeah, I can completely agree with it being the #1 choice. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode. But until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.